Well, it's the last big primary day of this midterm season, and all eyes are on Delaware, a tiny state with an enormous race. Tea Party candidate Christine O'Donnell, endorsed by Sarah Palin, is poised to upset the Republican Party's pick, Representative Mike Castle. That's according to recent polling there. And we're going to start in Delaware and move on to the rest of today's races. Joining me now, New York Times chief political correspondent Jeff Zeleny from his newsroom in New York, and CBSNews.com's Stephanie Condon, who joins me here at the desk in Washington. Good morning, guys. Good morning. So this is a really small sliver of the electorate that is going to actually be voting in Delaware today. So it seems like it's really going to come down to who's got the better ground game, the Tea Party, which is supporting Christine O'Donnell, or the Republican State Party, which is supporting Representative Castle. Right, Jeff?
I think you're right about that, Nancy. I mean, sort of all the pent-up energy and all the pent-up things that have happened throughout this long 7-month primary season are look from the outside like they're boiling down to Delaware, but this really is, as you said, a very, very local race, a small number of people turning out. So national Republicans and state Republican leaders there are really frantically trying to get people to the polls. One of the problems for Mike Castle is, though, independents cannot vote in this primary. It's a closed primary system, so that generally benefits the more conservative candidate in this race. So the Republican establishment, who has picked Mike Castle as their candidate, he's a former 2-term governor, longtime congressman. They are worried that he will not be able to appeal to this narrow set of the electorate.
And of course, Stephanie, the reason that we all care about this race so much is that the Republican State Party is hinting that basically it's going to pick up its ball and go home if Christine O'Donnell wins, because they think she is not electable in a general election, and therefore they would not pick up Vice President Joe Biden's old seat, a seat that the Republicans appeared to be easily able to pick up just about a month ago.
Yeah, definitely. This is a critical seat for the Republicans if they want a chance at taking back the Senate. And, you know, there is evidence to suggest they're right, that O'Donnell isn't as viable as a candidate. Public policy polling, which had the most recent numbers out on this race, put out some more numbers last night from their general election polling, showing that O'Donnell I think is 25 points below Castle in favorability ratings among the general electorate in Delaware. And on top of that, the Democratic candidate does 26 points better against O'Donnell than against Castle. So, I mean, it definitely is clear that Castle has broader appeal.
And part of that is because she's a social conservative. She has railed against pornography. She's pro-abstinence. And Delaware is a moderate, some would say a blue state. And so this morning on the early show, she appeared and she was asked about some of her, not only that, but some of her personal and professional financial problems, reports that she's been working odd jobs, that her house was foreclosed on, that she hasn't been able to pay campaign workers in the past. Here's what she had to say about whether that makes her unelectable.
I made it through the difficult times. That's what the voters are seeing. Financial responsibility is making your obligations right. My opponent has cashed a government paycheck, a taxpayer-funded government paycheck, for over 4 decades. So when he makes those accusations that that's irresponsible because someone has struggled, he's insulting the voters, and I think that's where the backlash has come from, and that's why so many former people who once supported my opponent are now on my side, because it's this obnoxious sense of entitlement that this position should be handed to the next anointed king.
Jeff, is this the kind of race where an argument like that, hey, look, I've got problems just like everybody else, I'm not going to be waltzing into office, I'm not being anointed, is this the kind of year where an argument like that works?
I think it's really the only thing she can say at this point. I mean, locally, the stories about her have been really harsh. It's not just her house being foreclosed on and things. It's just some odd behavior that she's had over the years. She's been on the ballot before in Delaware, so from the outside, we're sort of learning this for the first time. But she's a known quantity in small circles in Delaware. But I think she is. What's interesting here is that this race has become as competitive as it has. For months, Mike Castle ignored her. He thought the best approach for her was to not pay attention to her at all. But after Alaska, after Senator Lisa Murkowski in Alaska was defeated, some 2 weeks ago, he decided that he needed to fight back and engage her. So we'll see if that was a right strategy or not, because all of his emphasis on her has just raised her profile.
Right, and it seemed like things really turned around for her overnight once the Tea Party, fresh off of its success in Alaska, came to Delaware and pledged $250,000 for her campaign, which in a small state like Delaware is a lot. But Delaware is not the only state where the Tea Party is poised for victory today, right, Stephanie?
That's right. In New Hampshire, Kelly Ayotte faces Ovad Lamontagne, and Ayotte was the candidate that the establishment has gone behind, but Lamontagne has come back with an endorsement from Jim DeMint, and he seems to be gaining some momentum.
Jeff, how are things playing out in that New Hampshire primary and other primaries where the Tea Party is surging?
New Hampshire's a little bit of a unique situation, as it usually is in politics. So both of these figures, and in fact, there's a third candidate in the race as well, are well-known political figures in New Hampshire. But if the front-runner were to win tonight, she is the Attorney General. She is seen as having a strong shot in November. But if not, I mean, even Ovid Lamontagne, he's been on the ballot a long time in New Hampshire. So New Hampshire has not been influenced as much by the Tea Party movement because there's more of a political structure there. You know, some of these sentiments have been aired in New Hampshire for a long time, so it's much more of an organized effort. They've been up on the air for a long time, so it's not, New Hampshire and Delaware are not that comparable. But the bottom line is, the big picture here is, will tonight hurt or help Republican efforts to control the Senate? And if they lose that seat in Delaware, if Mike Castle loses in Delaware, it becomes more difficult for Republicans to win the 10 seats they need to gain control.
And Stephanie, no matter what, one thing we definitely know heading out of this primary season already is that we're going to be seeing a lot of new faces in Washington come next year.
Yeah, that's right. This is definitely a year where a lot of incumbents are leaving. We have, with the senators that have already lost in the primaries and all the senators retiring, we'll have at least 15 new senators. And I think the most new senators we've ever had in 1 year is 20. So, if we have any more surprises, we could be seeing a record number.
Well, this year is nothing if not surprising, so we'll wait to see what happens. But Jeff Zeleny of the New York Times, Stephanie Condon of CBS News, thanks both so much for joining us to talk politics today.
Thank you.